How much screen time is too much? Every parent has asked it. After years of practicing as a pediatrician, I've come to realize that is the wrong question. It's really about what is your child doing with that screen? And today we're joined by Arlie Greenwald, the Next Playground head of community, who has collected a number of questions from families that get asked over and over again about how to figure out the right approach to screen time in our technology-filled world. Welcome to the Active Play Everyday podcast powered by Next Playground. The information shared here is for education and inspiration. It's not medical advice. All right, let's get moving.
Emily, I'm thrilled to be talking to you about this topic because I know screen time is why you became our chief pediatric advisor. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of these questions, could you just tell us a quick background of how you got involved with the company?
Yeah. So, it was my own struggle with our kids and seeing our kids go into zombie mode on tablets and just completely check out, not be connected with the world, not be connected with me, but begging for tablet time. And I saw like a very early advertisement for Next Playground on a social media feed. And I was like, oh my gosh, like these kids are like off the couch and playing. And I ordered one. And at that time, it was a couple months, until it came because they were in pre-production. It arrived like ironically on a rainy day. So I was like, oh, thank goodness I've got something to entertain the kids. I plug it in real easy. It turns on. And the next thing you know, I'm like going to change into my workout clothes. We've got the living room fan on. We're all sort of huffing and puffing, laughing, having this great time up off the couch. And then this light bulb went off for me where I realized, oh my goodness, like this is a different type of screen time than we've ever had in our house. And this actually feels good for kids. And I wanted to know more. And so I did something I've never done before. I started Googling, like who is behind this company. And I discovered David Lee, who is, the leader. And I DM'd him on Facebook and said, hey, like, you don't know me. I'm a pediatrician, but I think you're onto something here. And how can I help? And he reached back out and we got together on Zoom and had a conversation. And, one thing led to another. And he really saw the value of having a pediatrician's perspective on building a screen option for kids. And he wanted to marry what we know and have discovered in pediatrics with what he knows in the tech industry and do the very best thing he could for kids. And so one thing led to another, and I have been in this role as chief pediatric advisor and loving it. And it's been something I never would have guessed I would have done in my career, but it's been very rewarding.
It's a very exciting and hopeful story too, just the fact that it's tech for good and we're truly doing it with science and guidance from the experts. In 2026, should parents still be thinking in terms of screen time limits?
Probably a little bit, but the attention really has shifted. And the American Academy of Pediatrics has come out pretty strongly and said we need to be thinking more about the quality of the screen time and what screen time is displacing, because everyone has come to admit that we live in a modern world and we're not going to get rid of screens, right? They are part of our world. And so parents should be thinking through, is this passive, like zombie mode screen time, or active? You're up off the couch, you're moving, you're exercising with it. Are you connected? So you may be connected through an online game potentially, if you can do that in a safe way. Or you may be connected in that you're watching something with your parent and a friend and discussing it, what's happening on the screen. You may be connected by actually up and off the couch, playing something together in front of a screen. And then what is the content? Is it purely sort of junk, as I call it, and just, entertainment, but you're not learning anything. It's not stretching your mind in any way. Or there's educational content, right? Where you may be practicing school skills. You may be watching an, nature show that you're learning something about animals. And then finally, yes, we need to think about everything that screen is displacing. So even the best quality screen time, you should not be doing all day, every day. You need to be still getting outside, moving your body, doing things away from a screen. And for each family on each day, that the limits may change. And so thinking about how that should look for your family, how that should look for the age of your child, we can get into a bit later.
So you talked about movement and different types of screen time. What is this idea of extra gaming that Next Playground fits into? And as a pediatrician, what are you hoping for out of extra gaming in 2026 and beyond?
You think all the way back to Wii, the Nintendo Wii, which I had when I was younger. And that was like the first version of extra gaming. So you're actually moving more when you're using the screen. The problem with those early versions is you could hack them, right? So like you can play tennis with your wrist. Well, that's not really like the extra part. The exercise isn't really happening. And then there were various other versions that didn't fully catch on. As a pediatrician, I became really interested in VR options, but there was some research that came out and some child neurologists were really concerned about the fact that VR really isn't a perfect reality. And so for children, especially, and their developmental path that they need to be taking that's very different than an adult. Being in that virtual reality has a lot of potentially brain and development risks. So that's off the table for me as a mom. And so then the latest development is the Next Playground model, where you're still in your living room in reality and in a real space. You have a screen and it's sensing your motion. And what's so cool is it's sensing natural body movement. And so you are jumping, you're reaching, you're dancing, you're collaborating with the player next to you potentially in the same space. And that is the newest version of extra gaming, which for kids, I became super excited about. Even as an adult mom, it gets me huffing and puffing. And we have some early evidence that it's getting kids huffing and puffing, and it is very different than the heart and lung and physical experience that you have sitting on a couch scrolling. So that is how I describe extra gaming. And, just to sum it up, you are quite literally exercising. You're huffing and puffing, you're breathing harder, you're raising your heart rate with a screen involved. That is extra gaming.
In your opinion, does extra gaming help meet that need of movement and, meeting the daily CDC requirements of movement for children?
This is a big thing for me because for me, movement is a huge part of my own mental health and wellness. And I was overweight as a child and have really integrated a ton of movement into my own life and wanted to approach my own kids' childhood with a lot of movement and really like active forward childhood. And as a pediatrician, we know that there's only 1 in 4 kids in the United States that meets that 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity every day that's recommended for optimal pediatric wellness. And so thinking through what's taking away and why are so many kids not reaching those goals, there's a lot of reasons for that, but a big part of it is sedentary screen time. When there was an option for a type of screen time where you are huffing and puffing and those minutes are added to that 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity, as a pediatrician, that was very exciting to me because I knew it was going to really help with the mental health, with the wellness, with the physical wellness of kids and families everywhere.
As parents, we all know that the fight around screen time is probably one of the largest problems we're all managing in the day and age of technology. How can families start addressing these and think about those healthier screen habits that you've mentioned?
It's a huge parenting challenge that, quite frankly, just wasn't like my own parents did not have to deal with this, at least not to the extent that modern parents, this is a major thing. And so the American Academy of Pediatrics has come out with a family media plan. And so, what is that? It actually is super helpful. And they have a website that you can go through, put in the age of your children, and it takes you through sort of a step by step process to consider this. And the reason why they have that approach is because if you have teenagers, for example, it's going to be a super collaborative. Let's sit down, let's identify all the screen time options that are in our house, right? The TV, potentially they have cell phones, video gaming systems, all these things. And we need to make a media plan that addresses the use for all of those things, potentially time limits, potentially no cell phones at the dinner table, right? It's going to go through every aspect, and you're going to figure out what's right for your family, and it's going to be a collaboration and agreement between teens and parents that may shift and change, right, as new technologies come out, et cetera. So let's flip that and say you're the parent of, a 2 and a 4 year old. Well, still, technology is part of their world. And so it's going to be thinking as a parent of what am I okay with now? What are the pros and cons of different types of screen time? How do I want to co-view, meaning use a screen together or co-play if it's a screen-based game with my child? How can I optimize or make healthiest the screen time options for those age ranges? And so a family media plan is something that if you've got young kids, start it now. And then there are suggestions for when do you shift and alter as your kids are getting older, as new technology comes out.
As you just said, every family is going to look different, either due to your family dynamics, your own parenting choices, and what you need for your family. With that in mind, as a pediatrician, what does healthy screen time look like to you?
That's such a hard question, right? Because every family is different. And for me, healthy screen time is screen time optimally where you're moving physically. So it can't be where you're just sitting there on the couch necessarily, the healthiest screen time. You are connected. So you're connected in some way, whether that's playing a game, virtually together. It could be that you're talking to a grandmother over FaceTime. That's screen time, but you're connected. You're making a connection. It's educational. Great. There's some educational content built in, and maybe that's your solving puzzles physically, moving and solving puzzles. Or it could be that you're sitting still and solving puzzles. But if your brain is engaged, that's better. And the last part that I don't think we talk about enough, and I would really like to start this conversation more, is content where your brain is engaged at a very different rate than your body. And so, what I mean by that is either very fast form video. There's actually, for example, YouTube content that's purposely created that goes really fast and is kind of hitting all these dopamine centers in your brain and keeping you engaged, and your brain is going fast and really enjoying this. But your body is completely still. And so we see, especially in children, when we have that mismatch, that's when children, when they put down that screen or move away from that screen, they become very dysregulated because their brains are amped up and their bodies are almost paralyzed, right? Like very still. And you can imagine they put that down and enter back into real world, and everything is discombobulated, to use a scientific word, and it is very difficult for children. And so as a parent, look, is the screen, what's happening on the screen, the pace of what's happening on the screen, matching the pace of what's happening with their body? And if you see a mismatch, that's something that you should probably really limit. So at the end of every Active Play Everyday podcast, I offer a Dr. Emily prescription for Active Play every day related to screen time. What is writing on that prescription is not a limit for the number of minutes. It's to evaluate screen time by the amount of interaction that happens because kids' development is directly linked to human interaction. Second, the amount of movement that your kid is getting every day. Do you need to limit passive or sedentary or still screen time? Or do you need to ramp up some active forms of screen time? And third, start early with a family digital media plan. Even if you've got a tiny little baby, okay, you know what? It is okay for them to FaceTime with grandma every now and then, but that's probably it. And then as they get older, you're going to develop this family media plan to optimize our tech based world that all of us live in for your kids' development.
This was wonderful. I think we addressed all the major questions that I see from the Next Playground community families. I think it's also just a great place to kickstart these conversations. If you guys have follow-up questions, please put them in the comments, and Emily and I will both be there. We'll also put great resources and from Next Playground, but even more importantly, from the different pediatric resources that Emily has mentioned. And if you have your own resources, please add those to the comments so we can include them.